Garbage. In this video I'll tell you why you should not install one carburetor on an opposed engine. A little background. All Soviet opposed engine bikes such as M72, K750, Dnepr MT, Ural, they all came from factory equipped with two carburetors, one on each head. But the Soviet village folks decided that if they ditch the two carburetors, stick one long pipe between the two heads and put one carburetor in the middle of that pipe, both cylinders magically will begin to work perfectly synchronously, plus it'll start consuming 2 times less gasoline since there's 2 times less carburetors. Unfortunately, this myth is still widely known among people and they often write me, install one carburetor and get rid of problems with synchronization of both cylinders. Okay, let's clarify this. If you ask an ordinary opposed engine dude who rides a Dnepr, Ural or a K750, what's gonna happen if you install one carburetor on a Boxer? The man will probably answer that the cylinders will begin to work synchronously and at the same time you'll get a much better fuel efficiency because now it sucks gasoline not from 2 carburetors but from one. So, a 2-cylinder engine will not consume less fuel from one carburetor since the intake stroke in the cylinders alternates, which means the cylinders suck in the fuel mixture in turn. One first, then a second, then a first again, then a second again. Both cylinders do not suck in the fuel mixture at the same time. So there's no difference to suck the mixture from 2 carburetors alternately or from one carburetor alternately. Absolutely the same thing. Gas consumption does not change. If you eat with 2 spoons at the same time, you won't get stuffed more. The intake stroke of each cylinder occurs in turn. The intake valves do not open at the same time and both cylinders do not pull in the mixture at the same time. They do it in turn. Now about synchronous cylinder work. In order for a Boxer with one carburetor to work synchronously, you must have an ideal top end with perfectly identical combustion chamber values and compression ratios on both cylinders. And even if you make an absolutely perfect top end with perfectly identical combustion chambers, your engine still will not work synchronously because your intake runners are not equal in length for both cylinders. On the right cylinder it's shorter and longer on the left one. You'll say you can move the carburetor to the left so it's in the center, and I'll say why if you can install 2 carburetors and then both cylinders will be fed through equal length intake runners. With 2 carburetors, the difference in compression ratios and combustion chambers on both cylinders can be compensated by adjusting the carburetors. That is enriching or leaning the mixture. While with one carburetor you simply cannot do this. You can say I have 4 or 8 jugs in my car and only one carburetor and everything works great. But your car's intake manifold is located in the upper part of the engine compartment where it's always warm, plus the manifold is warmed up by the liquid from the water jacket. And an opposed bike with one carburetor got its manifold outside and it's freezing. Have you ever seen a 1-carb manifold pipe on a Boxer in the summer? The pipe is covered with condensation, like a bottle of water that was just taken out of the fridge. In fall time, this pipe will be covered with frost. And in winter time, if of course you'll even fire up a Boxer engine with 1-carb in winter time, this pipe will be covered with ice. By the way, the difference in combustion chambers and compression ratios in a 4 or 8-cylinder engine is not as noticeable as in a 2-cylinder engine. So on 4 or 8-cylinder engines you can easily install one carburetor and everything works great. Now let's talk about what the carburation process is. Simple words, carburation process is when fuel is mixed with air and in the form of a mist like a steam goes through the warm intake port to your cylinder. If the intake runner is cold, then this misty mixture condenses. So from this mist, it'll turn into droplets of gasoline. All this settles on the walls of the intake runner and flows into the cylinder. This is why carburetor engines start and work worse when cold. Now imagine that your intake runner is not this long, but this 2 foot long and it's in a cold. Accordingly, the fuel condensates and just flows into the cylinders. As a result, due to poor combustion of the fuel mixture, efficiency drops and your engine drinks gas even more. People tinker porting cylinder head ports so that the fuel mixture enters the cylinder as smoothly as possible. But some people want to make several bends, elbows, turns, twists, and who knows what else. Why? I think your fuel mixture, which will try to get into the cylinder as quickly as possible, won't be happy about it. As for installing a car carburetor, a tractor carburetor, this kind of carburetor from a starter engine, and also, what else do people install on Dneprs? Yes, with a car carburetor, consumption at a minimum will not increase. Actually, it will because of the accelerator pump squirting fuel all the time. But the fuel consumption will not decrease since the intake stroke on each cylinder occurs alternately and the engine will take exactly as much as it needs. I mean, with the same success you could install 2 car carburetors on each cylinder and it'll still consume the same. And again, your synchronization with one automobile carb will not be perfect because the carburetor isn't located in the middle of of the intake manifold, and the dimensions of the combustion chamber and compression ratio on both cylinders are not identical in size. And the intake is cold. Yes, there were boxers with one carburetor from factory, for example German Zundab, but its manifold is very short and most of it is part of the engine block, which is warm. And in other models, the carburetor is completely hidden under a cover, it's heated up by the engine, and the intake runner goes through the engine itself like it's literally a part of the engine block, which is again warm. With a short and warm intake, the difference in compression ratios and in size of combustion chambers isn't so noticeable when the engine's running. That's basically all I wanted to tell you about one carburetor on a boxer engine. Personally, I think that if it'd be practical, it would have been installed from the factory. Yes, there are people who manage to heat this pipe from the exhaust. Like around this intake pipe, there's another pipe through which the exhaust flows. All this is heated up, but your engine will not work synchronously on one carburetor and it will not consume less fuel. Besides, the exhaust will simply overheat the intake manifold and the mixture will boil. So there's no reason to bother with it at all. Adjust your two carburetors real good and enjoy the ride. And now, talking from my own experience, I'll give you a couple of tips on how to reduce the fuel consumption in an opposed engine while increasing its power. The very first thing is to install the ignition based on a car ignition module with a Hall sensor or with an optical sensor. Install a coil from a 105 Volga and install an ETA, meaning electronic timing advance, for example Sarma. With this type of ignition, the spark is very powerful, so the fuel will burn out completely. So for the same amount of fuel mixture, you'll have higher efficiency. You can also install a Soviet microprocessor ignition. It also has an excellent spark, it also has electronic timing advance, but its spark is a little weaker than the ignition with an automobile coil. Second point, personally, I think that this is an absolute necessary after you've installed an electronic ignition, porting the cylinder head ports. I mean to just remove all the boogers, steps, bumps, and divots. Make the ports smooth and nice. Thanks to this, the fuel mixture will freely enter the cylinder, which will improve the cylinder filling quality and throttle response. Porting must be done to both intake and exhaust ports. Only with these 2 points you will significantly reduce fuel consumption and increase the power of your engine, provided that you have overall heads and piston cylinder groups are in good condition. If this is not enough for someone, you can add the third to previous 2 points, install a 9th pair in a final gear. The 9th pair is a ring and pinion gear set where the pinion has 9 teeth instead of factory 8. The bike loses some torque but becomes more comfortable to ride on highways. It was with these 3 modifications, the ETA ignition with car components, ported cylinder heads in 9th pair, that I got 52 miles per gallon on highway and 47 miles per gallon in city mode, while from factory it's like 20 to 28 miles per gallon. And I've had such fuel mileage both with K63 and K68 carburetors. So mostly I limit myself to only these 3 points: powerful ignition, cylinder head sporting, and a 9th pair. I'm completely satisfied with both the engine performance and fuel efficiency. If this is not enough for you, then you can add the 4th point to increase the compression ratio by shortening the cylinders. You trim the cylinders, the heads sit lower, the compression ratio increases, accordingly the same amount of fuel mixture is compressed more, after which it explodes strongly during the power stroke, and accordingly the efficiency increases. I personally think install 2 carburetors, adjust them, and go have fun immediately. So 2 carburetors and a powerful ignition are exactly what you want and exactly what your opposed engine wants. So you do with your motorcycle whatever you want. I explained my point of view and how I see the situation with one carburetor on an opposed engine. That's all I had to say. Till the next video.